Now with a reaction to all of this, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds, along with Arizona Attorney General and Senate candidate Mark Brnovich. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us. Congressman, so Joe Biden says there's no federal solution. Does he not remember just a few months ago he said he had the federal solution? It was his federal nationwide vaccine mandate coupled with nationwide federal mask mandates. I mean, is this a guy who suffers from chronic amnesia because his brain is so addled, or is he incompetent, or maybe it's both?
I'm not sure what Joe Biden suffers from, but it's clear that he's extremely incompetent and doesn't know what he's doing. This is the same person who said he had a plan, but there are actually no monoclonal antibody treatments anywhere in the hospitals in the Northeast. They're actually being rationed right now because this administration did not plan. Millions of Americans are looking for tests or at-home tests. There aren't any because he did not plan. Time after time after time, Joe Biden has failed. Why are we surprised by this at this point, America? We shouldn't be. Compare that to at the beginning of the pandemic. There were no respirators. Donald Trump made sure that they were there. There was no PPE. Donald Trump made sure they were there. We were having major supply chain issues. That was a concern. Donald Trump made sure that didn't become a problem for the American people at the beginning of the pandemic. This has been a lesson for the American people to look at what's actually happening versus political talking points. Yeah. And the only person that has had talking points has been Joe Biden. There is no plan.
Well,
unfortunately, we have to live with it.
He had a lot of talking points, Attorney General Brnovich, during the campaign. He said he had a plan, he had a solution. He said, quote, "I'm going to shut down the virus." He said it over and over again. When he was inaugurated, he said the same thing, "I'm going to shut down the virus." Isn't this the problem when politicians running for office make all kinds of wild promises they can't possibly fulfill, and then when they fail, Americans get angry and resentful about it, and the politicians' ratings tank? Isn't that what happened here?
Greg, I think you encapsulated that very, very well. The reason why so many people are sick and tired of politics or sick and tired of D.C. is because there's so much hypocrisy and inconsistency. And what breaks my heart as a first-generation American is that there was a time in this country when the president said something, you believed it, you knew it was the truth. But because people like Joe Biden and people in his administration have been inconsistent and talked out of both sides of their mouth, they've created more chaos when it comes to the pandemic, and they've tried to exert unconstitutional powers they don't have. And so this country has faced many crises in the past, and we need to recognize, we need to understand that what's consistent about this country is the Constitution. The states created the federal government. The federal government didn't create the states. And what works in Manhattan, New York, may not work in Manhattan, Kansas, and isn't going to work in Manhattan Beach, California. So we need to recognize that system of federalism and recognize that in times of crisis, that is when we need our Constitution and the rule of law more than ever, because our Constitution cannot be mass distanced, and it should never be canceled, not even by President Joe Biden.
Congressman, sometimes I think Joe Biden believes that Americans are as stupid as he is. He said that if he'd known about the winter surge, why, he would have made testing widespread, readily available in advance. But he was warned in the springtime by health officials that there was going to be a surge, and they recommended millions of rapid tests. He was warned again in the fall. He was told that, we need 730 million rapid tests. He rejected the proposal. So isn't he lying when he says nobody knew? Fauci knew. Walensky at the CDC knew. They're his science advisors. They told him.
Listen, of course Joe Biden is lying. He's lying just like he said nobody told him about Afghanistan. It was a lie then. This is a lie now. Anybody with sense knows that in the winter months, any type of flu strain, influenza, COVID, something that's aerosolized is going to spread in the winter months in the Northeast. This is not a shock. It's happened every winter, basically in the history of mankind. The problem is that we're dealing with an inept president. This is the same person who's always failed. So like I said just a minute ago, why are we shocked at this point? The man doesn't know what he's doing. He is a failure. What the American people need to do now is we need to prepare for ourselves. We cannot rely on this president. We should never rely on government because government is too slow, not responsive, and unfortunately not bright enough. We need to rely on ourselves. We need to make sure we plan ahead. We need to do what's necessary to take care of ourselves and our families. Joe Biden is not here to help you, folks. He's going to let you down every single time.
You know, I remember, Attorney General, when Joe Biden, the candidate, scoffed at Donald Trump's prediction that in the springtime of this year, there would be vaccines readily available and distributed to Americans. Biden said, nonsense, that's not going to happen. So then when it happened, Joe Biden took credit for the vaccines as well as the distribution plan that Donald Trump had put in place. Biden largely went along with it, as well as Biden saying that he had no plan to deal with the vaccine. Isn't that his real failure here? Is he just never came up with a plan. He thought that the vaccines that Trump had devised would solve everything.
Yeah, Greg, I think it's the one thing that's been consistent is the fact that everything the Biden administration has touched has worked out very poorly. And there's an old saying that failure to plan is planning to fail. And we've seen this not only with the vaccine rollout and the way they've handled the pandemic, but this country has faced pandemics before, the Spanish flu, the Hong Kong flu, the Asian flu, and now the China flu. So this is something that we need to recognize has happened before, and we depend on leaders to make sure that they're planning appropriately. But make no mistake about it, whether it's we can't afford gas, we can't afford, meat, we can't afford groceries, fuel costs are going through the roof. And the Biden administration is to blame for all of this. And more importantly, Greg, remember, it's his enablers in Congress. As a result of these policies, we're seeing inflation go through the roof, and there can be no serious conversation about COVID and the pandemic unless we talk about the epidemic that Biden created on our southern border with fentanyl flooding into this country, methamphetamine flying into this country. And think about this. Everyone watching this tonight, they're telling Americans that they're going to restrict our constitutional rights and you have to do X, Y, and Z, or we're going to have more testing or not testing. And yet we're allowing people that have entered this country illegally to fly all across the country at taxpayer expense without being vaccinated and being dropped off in cities in the dead of night without being tested. That to me undermines every single thing the Biden administration is doing, and it points out the abject hypocrisy and irrationality of what they're trying to do when it comes to the pandemic.
All right, Congressman Donald's Attorney General Brnovich, thanks so much for being with us.